The churchyard is a sacred space. The tombs and gravestones are all in place. The bats in the belfry are there without cause, and the next funeral may well be yours. So make space, your wake needs a host. It's Pebbles playing Planet Coast.
Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, but you can call me Peter, and welcome back to our challenge. This isn't our Challenge Park series, this is our Halloween Park series. Silly me, how could I be so stupid as to get the wrong park when we are very clearly on the run-up to Halloween? Now, in the last episode of this series, we completed this area of our park, that being the slightly gloomy woods. There's still a little bit of work that needs to be done off camera, but that's an off-camera job for me for later. But for now, we are making a start on the next and final area of the park, which is through here. So before we get to that, let's just turn on the lights quickly. And we'll get in and get started. So this is what we're working with. A little bit of terrain work needs to be done, but that is no sweat off our backs. But yes, this is where we will be building our next area. And without further ado, let's just roll that time lapse. Yes, hello and welcome to the time lapse. And yes, as you very well have just seen, we are on our final area, which is bittersweet. You know, it's fun to think that we've come this far in 13 episodes, but at the same time, it's also like, oh, is it almost done? But there we go. It's one of those things. Now, what are we doing with this area? Well, I will leave that as a surprise for once we get the theming into this ride, which shouldn't be too long. And, yes, but small area. This one we've only got 2 rides, I believe. 2 flat rides and a tracked ride, which is fun. And yes, we're starting with a drop tower, because we don't have something like that in the park yet. You know, we've got all manner of flat rides, but we don't have a drop tower. So let's put a drop tower in. And we are, as we do, we are getting our theming in right from the get-go for this for this flat ride, which is almost a dark ride in itself, but there we go. And as you will see there, we've made it in a particular shape because this is all going to be a church. That's right, this area is sort of going to be themed up to a churchyard and a graveyard. So obviously you've got this, which will sit kind of towards the centre and back of the area. This is our drop tower within the belfry of the church, and it's called Bats in the Belfry because we are theming it up to these sorts of bats that live up in the belfry. Very creative naming, I know. And yeah, it's quite fun because it's something different, you know. As I've said, I really like doing different things with this park, and I like the fact that I can come in and do something different. And that's what I like about this area, is that actually it is different. It is very different. To really anything I've made before in this game. You know, I've made all manner of things, but I've never made a church drop tower or a church in general. So, you know, it's quite fun to come in and actually make one. Now, the style that we are going for is proper, you know, British parish church. That's sort of the inspiration that I'm going for, and I think I've just about managed that sort of feel. And then coming in to put some path around here, again, it isn't just the church that needs to have this feel, it is the rest of the area as well, and I think we just excel at getting this parish church feel in. But yeah, sticking a path around there so you can actually get to the front door, and sticking that in there. And it is properly starting to take shape now, which is fun. You know, I love it when you kind of watch something take shape and you start and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, and then it works and you're like, yes, this works. Now, we had a little bit of a pause there, and that was me trying to find some inspiration for are built. And one of the things that I noticed, both in real life and on the reference images that I found, is that the corners of these buildings will usually have sort of these octagonal, these octagonal sort of designs to them, in the sort of, it protrudes out at the corners, if I'm making any sense whatsoever. But yeah, so just coming in here, placing these down to add that depth and variety that you do see on actual parish churches, and just copying it down, making sure I get it, and then copying it down, and down, and down, and down, and getting it to a place where it looks quite good, and it sort of separates the tower out from everything else, which is fun, and I do really like the way that this looks. Now, coming in and sticking this, sticking some trim around the tower, just to, again, add a little bit more variety onto it. I think this looks divine. I think it just looks really nice, and it's simple, but it's effective. And finally, we are coming in here, adding the fairy tale theme, because that's also got some really nice windows that work for this, and we're putting in some windows. I know they're castle windows technically, but they just work so well with what these windows would actually look like on a tower in real life. So there we go. And obviously on the topic of windows, I couldn't quite, get in and not start with this window here. That's sort of your main stained glass window that sits towards the front of the church, or the back, or whatever, and I think of those and I think, yeah, that's kind of the defining thing that I need to get in. Now coming in, we can do some more trim as we so generally do. And I did toy with putting some gargoyles or statues and stuff around, but they just didn't look right. So instead, we come in and we are putting some spires onto the corners now, which was something that was more difficult than I first thought it would be. You think, okay, spire, that's easy. It's just a thing that goes up, but there's the bit that the spire sits on top of, and I couldn't quite get the top of this church right. So what you're about to see now is just a ton of me kind of going back and forth with what I want this to look like, and trying to find something that works, not finding something that works, and then compromising and finding something that works. But yeah, I initially started with these castles and their parapets, and it just didn't look right. Obviously, there's no way. Well, from what I could tell, there was no piece that allowed me to use the same parapet as that, extended at that length, and just kind of making all of these corners octagonal ones just look really stupid from a distance. So bye-bye, they're all going. So what next? What could we try? Well, these castle supports exist, and I thought they'd kind of do the same job but slightly differently, and I was right. It does do the same job, just slightly differently, and it looks so much better. So we're just getting these in now, and yeah, again, it just looks fantastic when we get to the end of it. Now, using the little trick of copying it round and copying it round, again, it's subtle, but I like it, and that's what I think makes it work. And then coming in with sort of these more pieces to try and make it work. We try these Orioles, and I go, ooh, maybe that'll work. And then I ultimately give up on using the Orioles because they don't work. Again, we try using parapets again, and I think we stick with them this time. Kind of getting them in. And yeah, that looks a lot better than using the other parapets. So we can finally move on down, add some more windows, and see where we are. So obviously we've got the windows on the tower now. What next? Well, I did toy with using some of these buttresses around the outside, and it didn't work down there, but these very, very little buttresses, they worked really well as sort of an adjoining force between the tower and the church itself. So I thought we'll stick with these, And I'm glad I did stick with these because they look really nice, and it just, again, adds a little bit of texture and a little bit of variety to the outside of the building, which, again, you really can't complain about. Now, coming back up to the top, we get in some, or at least we try to get in some bits and pieces in the corners, and we go for these pedestals, and then we put some spires on top of the pedestals, because ultimately we get rid of the pedestals but keep the spires, because, as I said before, we needed the spires because you will often see on the top of these church towers they do have spires in the corners, and so I thought this is perfect to kind of stick in and make it properly look like a church. And there is the cut and off footage. Obviously you didn't see me off camera finishing that off. There's the bats in the belfry now, and the other thing you didn't see is the interior, but we have done a full interior for that church with things like pews, a lectern, and my personal favourite, an organ, which, yes, works quite well for what it is. Now, coming out here, we are starting our other ride, our other flat ride in this area. That's right, we don't have time to do kind of lots and lots of episodes on these, so it is just get the ride in and talk about it a little bit. And you will see me here struggling with the name of this flat ride, but this is Mausoleum. So the idea behind this is that it is this mausoleum that is kind of a little bit crumbled, a little bit run down, but it sits in this churchyard, and I really wanted to kind of build that to sit within here. And again, I don't want to say I've done more off camera, but kind of just earlier, actually, before I came in to edit this video, I was going in to grab some B-roll footage, and I thought, actually, I can do something interesting. So I went in and I completely revamped the queue line and did something cool around there with more of this mausoleum feel. But that is something for later. Now, why did I want to use a synchronize? Well, it has a blocky feel as it is, and I feel like it's a really interesting sort of flat ride to have in a park, and I've played around with them before. I've played around with one in my personal massive project that I've been working on that, you know, I'd love to show you all at some point if there's support for it, but that aside, that had a similar theme, actually, to be fair. It was themed around sort of these Greek pillars and sort of keeping that, again, pillory, temple-y feel around it. And I suppose that is somewhat similar to what we're doing here, but it's just with that it was a lot of, you know, Greek pillars, whites and blues and stuff like that. And it's a really fun ride, to be fair, and I really like the way that it turned out. But that is besides the point, because that's not what we're doing today. Today we are here on Mausoleum, which is a lot darker, a lot more kind of grey. And again, the difficulty of this is kind of building up this outside of it, because there's only so much you can do to make it look nice. Yeah, there's only so much you can do to make it look the way you want it to. And ultimately what I do is I come in here with these castle wall pieces, and we are going to just create a square around it. Which, you know, simply done, but I think it looks quite effective once we kind of get down to actually, you know, finishing it. Because, you know, we're here, and as we zoom out, it's just a little bit blocky, it's a little bit silly, but I like it. Now, coming in down the bottom here, we are adding more of these castle walls, again, but this time around the bottom, and what we're doing is we're just getting them to the right place, and this time we can use the rotational symmetry button, so we're just placing them in and making them fit the theme, which is quite fun. You know, I think mausoleums, these, you know, slightly massive, but slightly sort of kind of stone buildings that are old, sometimes overgrown, and all of that. You know, the biggest source of reference I have is the Mills family mausoleum from the show Once Upon a Time. And I know this is wildly different, and you might look at this at the end and go, that's not a mausoleum. And I can only apologise because, there's only so much I can do to make this look the way that I want it to. But I think ultimately, with what we've got here, and then with what the surrounding bits and pieces on it look like, I think it works just about. So now we're coming in and we're using some different windows that we haven't used before, and we're just sticking them down here, rotating them round, just sticking them on the edge of the mausoleum. And then coming in and duplicating them backwards just to make sure that they are actually touching the thing itself. Now coming down here to the path, obviously I don't do much with the queue line in this episode. It's very much an outside of episode stuff. You'll have to wait till after the next episode to see what I do with it, which is fun, but there we go. Now coming in here, we're just making this bit look very overgrown, putting in a couple of bushes around, and you may think to yourself, is that it? No, that's not it, but I very much thought that this was going to be it, because, I look at it and I go, it looks the way that I want it to, but and making it look overgrown has just kind of made it look very isolated. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom sort of border for it, which is quite fun. So we're starting off with these keep pieces. I love these keep pieces. They are absolutely brilliant. And then coming in and using some keep columns in the middle. What we then do is we just copy it across, and then we take all of those, add them to a building, so we can edit it all, and then rotate it all so it's there. So now we have this nice little square that these are all in, which looks really, really nice. And again, it just looks slightly overgrown, and I think that's just how it's meant to look. Now coming in, we're going to do some more work on Mausoleum in a sec, but I just wanted to get a little bit of set dressing done with these Gothic plaques, which I have turned into tombstones, and I thought these would look really, really nice, kind of around this area here. This is supposed to be a churchyard, a graveyard, so there's supposed to be a couple of graves around, and it's supposed to look quite cool. Now, I did have an original idea for this area that I was going to see if I could play around with the idea of things like zombies and stuff like that, and you'll see in the next episode that I give that a go, but it doesn't really work out, so we go down a different route. So instead, this is mostly an area for atmosphere, I believe. I mean, there's atmosphere, and then there's the other ride that we put in, but that's neither here nor there, and that's a job for the next episode, which, again, I do not want to spoil quite yet. But coming in and putting these bits and pieces down just to, make the graves look a little bit more like graves, and just putting some greenery down to, again, add and make it all look quite nice. It is what it is. And it's using a lot of these boulders and stuff around the outside. Again, it just adds so much of set dressing. You think you pop down a thing, you put a couple of bits around it, and it looks alright. But it's actually coming in and putting down these rocks that really make it pop. And, well, rocks, nature, scenery, all of that. It's everything that makes it kind of... It adds to the atmosphere of the area, and as I've said before, atmosphere is the big thing with this area. Now coming in here, again you can see I did toy with zombies, and then I went, no, what I can do is I can put these fellas on pillars, and actually it's slightly silly looking, but I like it. But yeah, you can see here that I tried zombies, and zombies just didn't work out. So we're putting a couple more trees down. I toyed around with what I wanted for this area, and originally I wanted it to be quite open, quite bare, but there we go. It didn't work out. Now finally, we are putting some bits of ivy and bits of trailing stuff up and down here, and we're about to finish the time lapse, so I'll see you in a second. Alright, well, welcome back to Real Time. So we've got a bit done in today's episode That's right, we've come over here and we've built this, our lovely drop tower with the bats in the belfry inside this lovely old church here, which is quite fun. And then coming over here, we've got our synchronized called Mausoleum, which is open and ready for business. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please feel free to give me a like, give me a comment, possibly even a subscribe if I am lucky enough. And I will see you in the next episode. So, yes, ta-ta. Let's roll that outro.